Have you ever wondered how an abandoned baby floating in a river would one day face the most powerful king on earth, and lead an entire nation to freedom? What would it take for someone to give up everything, power, privilege, safety, for the sake of a people enslaved? Could you trust a plan that made no sense, until it changed history forever? Today on Bible Animations, we travel back in time to uncover one of the most epic stories in all of Scripture, the story of Moses and the Exodus. A journey of faith, courage, and God's unstoppable plan for his people. Our story today begins with the birth of Moses. He was born in the land of Egypt during a time of great sorrow for the Israelites. They were descendants of Jacob, once honored guests in Egypt, but now they were slaves, forced into hard labor, mistreated, and growing too numerous for Pharaoh's liking. Fearing their numbers, the Egyptian king had issued a terrible order: every baby boy born to the Hebrews was to be thrown into the Nile. But one couple from the tribe of Levi had hope. When their baby boy was born, they saw something special in him. He was a beautiful, healthy child. For 3 months, they kept him hidden, risking everything. But when it became too dangerous, his mother crafted a small basket from bulrushes, sealing it with tar to make it float. She placed her baby inside, and gently set him among the reeds of the Nile River. From a distance, his sister watched over him. And then, something unexpected happened. Pharaoh's daughter came to bathe at the river, and as she walked along the bank, she noticed the basket among the reeds. Curious, she sent one of her maids to retrieve it. When she opened it, she saw the crying baby, and her heart was moved with compassion. "This must be one of the Hebrew babies," she said. Just then, the baby's sister stepped forward and offered to find a Hebrew woman to nurse the child. The princess agreed, and without realizing it, she was sending the baby right back to his own mother. The boy was nursed and cared for until he grew older, and then brought back to Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her own and named him Moses, saying, "Because I drew him out of the water." Moses grew up with privilege in Pharaoh's palace, but he never forgot his people. One day, now a grown man, he went out to see the harsh labor his fellow Hebrews were enduring. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. Looking around and seeing no one, Moses acted. He killed the Egyptian and hid the body in the sand. The next day, he saw 2 Hebrew men fighting and tried to intervene. But one of them snapped at him, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" Moses froze. His secret was out. Word reached Pharaoh, who immediately sought to kill him. Moses had no choice but to flee for his life. He escaped eastward to the land of Midian, where he sat down by a well, alone, exiled, and unsure of his future. There he started a new life far from Egypt. He married a woman named Zipporah and they had a son. But even as the years passed, Moses could never forget his people. His story, and God's plan for him, was just beginning. Back in Egypt, the situation for the Israelites grew worse. Pharaoh died, but the suffering of the people did not. The Israelites groaned under the weight of slavery. They cried out, and their cries rose to heaven. Years passed and God heard them. He remembered his covenant, the promise he had made to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And God looked upon his people, and his heart was moved. The time for deliverance had come. One day, as Moses tended the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, he wandered deep into the wilderness, far from where anyone usually went. He came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, something extraordinary caught his eye: a bush engulfed in flames, but it wasn't burning up. Intrigued and amazed, Moses stepped closer to see this strange sight. Then, a voice called out from within the fire, his name, spoken twice with power and purpose: "Moses, Moses." Startled, Moses answered, "Here I am." But the voice continued, "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." As Moses stood trembling before the burning bush, the voice from the fire revealed himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God told Moses he had seen the suffering of his people in Egypt and was sending him to deliver them into a land flowing with milk and honey. When Moses doubted his worthiness and asked what to say when questioned, God declared, "I am who I am. Tell them, I am has sent me to you." He instructed Moses to gather the elders of Israel and go to Pharaoh, warning that only through great wonders would the king be compelled to let the people go. And when that time came, God said, his people would not leave empty-handed. The Egyptians would look favorably on them, and they would give them silver, gold, and fine clothing. The people of Israel would leave with abundance, just as God had foretold. Moses still wasn't convinced. "What if they don't believe me?" he asked. "What if they say, 'The Lord didn't appear to you'?" So God gave him signs, miracles to show that the message truly came from heaven. First, he asked Moses, "What's that in your hand?" It was just a shepherd's staff. But when Moses threw it to the ground, it became a snake. Moses jumped back in fear, but God told him to take it by the tail. As soon as he did, the snake turned back into a staff. Then God gave him a second sign. Moses put his hand inside his cloak. When he pulled it out, it was covered with a terrible skin disease, white as snow. His eyes widened in fear. But God gently said, "Put it back again." So Moses did, and when he pulled it out once more, his hand was perfectly healed, just as it had been before. And finally, God said that if the people still didn't believe, Moses could pour water from the Nile onto the ground, and it would become blood. Moses still hesitated, saying he wasn't a good speaker, but God reminded him that he gave speech and promised to help him. When Moses pleaded for someone else, God appointed his brother Aaron to speak on his behalf, assuring that he would help them both, and told Moses to take the staff and go. Moses returned to his father-in-law Jethro, received his blessing, gathered his family, and set out for Egypt with the staff of God in hand. Along the way, God reminded him, Pharaoh's heart would be hard. He would resist. But through great wonders, God would make his will known. As Moses traveled, Aaron came to meet him in the wilderness, just as God had said. The two brothers embraced, and Moses shared all that the Lord had spoken, all the signs, all the commands, everything that lay ahead. Then they went together to the elders of Israel. Aaron spoke, and Moses showed the signs. The people listened, and believed. When they heard that the Lord had seen their suffering, they bowed down and worshipped. Moses and Aaron finally stood before Pharaoh, the powerful king of Egypt. They delivered God's message with courage, "Let my people go, so they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness." But Pharaoh looked at them with disdain. "Who is the Lord?" he said. "Why should I obey him? I don't know this God, and I will not let Israel go." Moses and Aaron told Pharaoh that the God of the Hebrews had met with them and asked to let the people go on a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices. But Pharaoh refused, accusing them of distracting the people from their work, and insisted they return to their labor. He ordered the slave drivers to stop providing straw for brickmaking. "Let the people gather their own straw," he said, "but do not reduce their daily quota of bricks." His plan was clear: crush their spirit with harder labor so they would stop thinking about freedom and God. The Israelites were overwhelmed by Pharaoh's harsh new demands, forced to gather their own straw while still meeting impossible brick quotas. When they failed, they were beaten. Their leaders pleaded for mercy but were dismissed as lazy. Angry and discouraged, they blamed Moses, who in turn cried out to God. God responded with a promise: he would act with power, and Pharaoh would be forced to let his people go, remembering the covenant made with their ancestors. God told Moses to speak again to the Israelites, promising to free them from oppression, make them his people, and lead them to the land he had sworn to their ancestors, but the people, crushed by suffering, didn't listen. Even so, God commanded Moses to go to Pharaoh, assuring him that though Pharaoh would resist, Moses and Aaron were chosen to deliver God's message, and through them, his power would be revealed. Moses and Aaron obeyed. Though Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron 83, they stood before Pharaoh with boldness. As God had forewarned, Pharaoh demanded a miracle. So Aaron threw down his staff, and it became a serpent before the king and his officials. But Pharaoh summoned his magicians, and they did the same by their secret arts. Yet something unexpected happened. Aaron's serpent swallowed up all the others. Even so, Pharaoh's heart remained hard. He refused to listen. God began his judgments against Egypt when Pharaoh refused to let the Israelites go. At the Nile, Moses declared God's warning, and Aaron struck the waters with his staff, turning the river into blood, killing the fish and leaving Egypt without clean water. Yet, Pharaoh's magicians replicated the sign, and Pharaoh's heart remained hard. He returned to his palace, ignoring what had happened, while the Egyptians, desperate for clean water, dug along the riverbanks since they could no longer drink from the Nile. Then came a plague of frogs flooding every part of Egyptian life, invading homes, beds, and kitchens. Pharaoh pleaded with Moses to pray for relief, promising to let the people go. Moses prayed, and the frogs died, leaving the land reeking with heaps of them. But when Pharaoh saw the crisis was over, he hardened his heart and broke his word. At God's command, Aaron struck the dust of the land with his staff, and it turned into gnats that covered both people and animals throughout Egypt. The magicians tried to replicate the sign but failed, admitting, "This is the finger of God." Still, Pharaoh's heart remained hard, and he refused to listen, just as God had foretold. Once again, God sent Moses to Pharaoh with the command to let his people go, warning that if he refused, a severe plague would strike Egypt's livestock, but spare the animals of Israel. The next day, every Egyptian herd in the field died while the Israelites' animals remained untouched. Even after confirming this, Pharaoh's heart remained hard, and he still refused to release the people. God instructed Moses and Aaron to throw soot from a furnace into the air before Pharaoh, and as it spread over Egypt, painful boils broke out on people and animals. Even Pharaoh's magicians were afflicted and couldn't stand before Moses, but Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, and he still refused to listen. God warned Pharaoh through Moses that the most severe plagues were coming to display his power and make his name known throughout the world. The next day, a hailstorm unlike any in Egypt's history struck, destroying people, animals, and crops left outside, while the land of Goshen remained untouched, spared by God's protection. Pharaoh, shaken by the storm, admitted his guilt and begged Moses to pray for the hail to stop, promising to let the Israelites go. Moses prayed, the storm ceased, but Pharaoh broke his word again. God told Moses that these signs were meant to show his power and be remembered by future generations. Moses and Aaron warned Pharaoh that if he refused again, locusts would devour what remained after the hail. Pharaoh's officials urged him to yield, but when he asked who would go, Moses said all the people and their animals. Pharaoh, refusing to allow that, sent Moses and Aaron away. So God sent the next plague. Moses stretched out his staff, and a strong east wind blew through Egypt all day and night. By morning, it carried in a swarm of locusts, thick and countless. They devoured every green thing that the hail had not destroyed. The land was ruined. Not a single tree or plant remained untouched. In desperation, Pharaoh begged Moses and Aaron to pray for the locusts to be removed, and when Moses prayed, God sent a strong wind that blew every locust into the Red Sea, but still, Pharaoh's heart remained hard. Then came a plague of total darkness over Egypt for 3 days, except in the land of Goshen, where the Israelites lived. Pharaoh agreed to let the people go but refused to release their animals, leading to a final confrontation with Moses, who warned him that they would not meet again. God then revealed that a final plague was coming, one that would compel Pharaoh to release the Israelites, and instructed the people to request silver and gold from their neighbors, who surprisingly gave generously, showing favor toward them and great respect for Moses. At midnight, just as God had warned Pharaoh through Moses, the Lord moved through Egypt, striking down every firstborn, from Pharaoh's palace to the lowliest servant's hut, even the firstborn of the animals. A great cry of anguish rose across the land, not a single household was spared. But in the homes of the Israelites, where the blood of the lamb marked their doorframes according to God's instruction, no harm came. Dressed for travel, they ate the Passover meal in silence, protected by the sign that set them apart. That same night, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron. His resistance was finally broken. "Leave," he said. "Take your people, your flocks, and your herds, and go worship your God." The Egyptians urged the Israelites to leave quickly, fearing for their lives. The people gathered their belongings and their unleavened dough, still wrapped in cloth, and left without delay. They also asked the Egyptians for silver, gold, and clothing, just as God had instructed, and the Egyptians gave them all they asked for. In doing so, the Israelites left Egypt with great wealth. Around 600,000 men, along with women, children, and others who joined them, set out from Ramesses to Succoth. They took their livestock and baked unleavened bread on the way, for they had no time to prepare. After 430 years in Egypt, to the very day, God led his people out, just as he had promised. When Pharaoh finally let the Israelites go, God did not lead them through the nearby Philistine territory, even though it was a shorter route. He knew they might turn back if they faced battle. Instead, he led them through the wilderness, toward the Red Sea. The people left Egypt equipped and determined, carrying with them the bones of Joseph, just as he had asked centuries earlier, trusting that God would one day bring them home. As they journeyed, the Lord himself went ahead of them. During the day, he guided them with a pillar of cloud, and at night, with a pillar of fire. These signs never left their place before the people, leading them every step of the way. God instructed Moses to have the Israelites camp by the sea, knowing Pharaoh would see this as a sign of confusion and try to trap them. When Pharaoh heard the Israelites had fled, he and his officials regretted letting them go. They prepared hundreds of chariots and gathered the full strength of Egypt's army to pursue them. The Israelites, bold in their exit, suddenly found themselves trapped, Egypt behind them, the sea before them. Terrified, they cried out to God and turned against Moses, accusing him of bringing them into the desert to die. With night approaching and time running out, Moses stood firm and urged them to trust in the Lord's salvation, assuring them they would never see those Egyptians again. Then God commanded Moses to raise his staff and stretch it over the sea. At that moment, the angel of God and the pillar of cloud that had been guiding them moved behind the people, standing between them and the Egyptian army. All through the night, the cloud kept the Egyptians in darkness while giving light to the Israelites. Then God sent a strong east wind that divided the sea and turned the seabed into dry ground. With walls of water on either side, the Israelites crossed through the sea safely. The Egyptians pursued them into the passage, but before dawn, God threw their army into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariots, slowing their advance. Realizing the Lord was fighting for Israel, the Egyptians tried to retreat. But God told Moses to stretch out his hand once more, and the waters rushed back into place. The sea swallowed Pharaoh's entire army, his horses, chariots, and soldiers. Not one of them survived. But the Israelites walked through on dry ground and reached the other side unharmed. That day, they witnessed God's power in full. They saw the defeated Egyptian army washed up on the shore, and the people feared the Lord. From that moment on, they put their trust in God and in Moses, his servant. After their deliverance at the Red Sea, Moses and the Israelites broke into song, praising the Lord for his power and salvation.
Jehovah marches before his people, like a fire that clears the path. Mountains tremble, nations scatter, when he rises in his wrath. The enemies flee in fear, they cannot stand his light. The Lord fights for Israel, with glory, power, and might. cannot be moved. He split the sea with his breath, and he will do it again in truth. Walls crumble, the heavens shout. His triumph will never cease. The Lord fights for Israel and brings his people peace. Praise, praise to the God of Israel, mighty Jehovah. Praise, praise. His enemies shall fall before him. Praise, praise to the God of Israel, mighty Jehovah. Praise, praise. His enemies shall fall before him. His enemies shall fall before him.
From there, Moses led the people into the wilderness of Shur. For 3 days they found no water. When they finally reached a place called Marah, the water there was bitter and undrinkable. The people began to grumble, asking Moses what they were supposed to drink. Moses cried out to the Lord, and God showed him a piece of wood. When Moses threw it into the water, it became sweet and safe to drink. Their God gave the people a command: if they listened to his voice and obeyed his ways, he would protect them from the diseases he had brought on Egypt, for he was the Lord who heals. Soon after, they arrived at Elim, a place with 12 springs and 70 palm trees, where they camped and found rest by the water. After leaving Elim, the Israelites entered the desert of Sin. It had been a month and a half since they left Egypt, and once again, the people began to grumble. They complained to Moses and Aaron, saying they would have been better off dying in Egypt where at least they had food, rather than starving in the wilderness. While journeying through the wilderness, the Israelites complained of hunger, so God provided for them by sending quail in the evening and manna, bread from heaven, each morning. They were to gather only what they needed for each day, except on the 6th day, when they were to collect double so they could rest on the Sabbath. Some disobeyed and tried to store it, but the extra rotted, except on the Sabbath, when it stayed fresh. Though some still went out to gather, God reminded them the 7th day was for rest. The bread, called manna, was white like coriander seed and tasted like honey wafers. God told Moses to preserve a jar of it as a reminder of his provision. The Israelites ate manna for 40 years, until they arrived at the border of the Promised Land. While camped at Rephidim, the Israelites quarreled with Moses over their thirst, so God told him to strike a specific rock at Horeb with his staff, and when Moses did, water gushed out of the rock, providing enough for all the people to drink. Soon after, the Amalekites, a hostile tribe that opposed Israel, attacked, but Israel triumphed through Joshua's leadership and Moses' upheld hands, with God's power sustaining them. Hearing of all God had done, Moses' father-in-law Jethro visited, praised the Lord for his deliverance, and advised Moses to appoint capable men to share the burden of leadership, a wise counsel Moses gratefully put into action. After arriving at Mount Sinai in the 3rd month after leaving Egypt, the Israelites camped at the foot of the mountain while Moses went up to meet with God, who reminded them of his deliverance and offered a covenant: if they obeyed him, they would become his treasured possession and a holy nation. The people agreed, and God instructed Moses to consecrate them and prepare them to witness his presence. A perimeter of physical markers, such as ropes or stones, was set up around the base of the mountain to prevent anyone from crossing, and on the 3rd day, amid thunder, lightning, smoke, and the blast of a trumpet, God descended in fire. The mountain trembled, and Moses led the people to the foot of it as the Lord spoke. God called Moses to the summit once more to give further warnings, commanding that neither people nor priests should approach unless consecrated. So Moses went down to deliver God's warning to the people. Then, with all Israel gathered at the foot of the mountain, God himself began to speak aloud, declaring his 10 commandments to the entire nation, starting with, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery." He commanded them to worship no other gods, to make no idols, and not to misuse his name. The remaining commandments focused on moral living, honoring parents, and prohibiting murder, adultery, theft, false testimony, and coveting anything that belongs to one's neighbor. The awe-inspiring display of thunder, lightning, trumpet blasts, and smoke on the mountain terrified the people, and they begged Moses to speak with God on their behalf so they would not die. Moses reassured them that God's purpose was to instill reverence and keep them from sinning. While the people kept their distance, Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. There, the Lord reminded him that the people must not create idols of silver or gold. God gave Moses a set of laws to guide Israel in justice, compassion, and worship, covering everything from fair treatment of servants and restitution for harm, to caring for the vulnerable and honoring sacred times. Moses wrote down all the words the Lord had spoken and later read them aloud to the people, who responded with a solemn commitment to obey. These commands became the foundation of Israel's covenant with God, shaping them into a holy nation, faithful to him, merciful to others, and prepared to follow his angel into the promised land, rejecting foreign gods and trusting in his guidance. After the people agreed to obey all of God's laws, Moses sealed the covenant with blood, ascended Mount Sinai by God's command, and entered the cloud of God's glory, where he remained for 40 days and 40 nights to receive the stone tablets of the law. God gave Moses precise instructions to build a sanctuary where he would dwell, including detailed plans for the ark, the table, the lampstand, the tabernacle structure, and its surrounding courtyard. Each crafted exactly as shown on the mountain. He also established sacred rituals, garments, and daily offerings to consecrate the priests and maintain holiness in his dwelling among the people. To carry out this divine work, God appointed Bezalel and Oholiab, filled them with his spirit and skill, and reaffirmed the Sabbath as a perpetual sign of his covenant before giving Moses the tablets of the law. While Moses remained on the mountain, the Israelites grew impatient and pressured Aaron to make them a god, so he fashioned a golden calf, and the people celebrated around it with sacrifices and revelry. The Lord, angered by their idolatry, intended to destroy them, but Moses interceded, reminding God of his promises to the patriarchs, and the Lord relented. When Moses descended and saw the calf and the dancing with his own eyes, he shattered the tablets of the covenant in anger, destroyed the idol, rebuked Aaron, and ordered the Levites to execute judgment. Afterward, he pleaded with the Lord for forgiveness on behalf of the people, but God declared he would punish the guilty and send a plague among them. After the Israelites' idolatry, the Lord told Moses to lead the people to the promised land, assuring that an angel would go before them but declaring he would not go with them lest he destroy them for their stubbornness, which caused the people to mourn and remove their ornaments in repentance. Moses continued meeting with God in the tent of meeting outside the camp, where the Lord spoke with him as a friend, and Moses pleaded for God's continued presence, saying he would not go without him. Moved by Moses' intercession, God agreed to go with them, and when Moses asked to see his glory, the Lord promised to reveal his goodness and proclaim his name, hiding Moses in a rock as his glory passed by, since no one could see his face and live. God told Moses to carve new stone tablets and return to Mount Sinai, where he renewed his covenant, commanding Israel to stay faithful, reject idols, and keep his laws. After 40 days with God, Moses came down with the 10 Commandments, his face shining from God's presence, and shared his words with the people. Moses reminded the Israelites to keep the Sabbath holy and invited them to bring offerings and use their skills to build the tabernacle as God had commanded. Led by Bezalel, Oholiab, and other gifted artisans, the people gave so generously that Moses had to tell them to stop, and with great care, the craftsmen built every part of the sanctuary, curtains, coverings, frames, and furnishings, just as the Lord instructed. Bezalel and the skilled craftsmen constructed the Ark of the Covenant from acacia wood overlaid with pure gold, complete with golden cherubim facing each other atop the atonement cover. They also made the table for the bread of the presence with its golden dishes and utensils, the intricate golden lampstand with almond-shaped cups and branches, the altar of incense overlaid with gold and fitted with carrying poles, and they prepared the sacred anointing oil and fragrant incense according to divine instruction. During their time in the wilderness, God gave Israel detailed laws and rituals through Moses, guidelines for worship, sacrifice, and holiness, so they would live as his set-apart people. But the journey was marked by repeated rebellion, the people grumbled, doubted, and disobeyed, leading to divine judgment and the decree that an entire generation would die before entering the promised land. Near the end of his life, Moses gathered the new generation and renewed the covenant, urging them to love and obey God with all their heart, warning them of the blessings and curses that would follow their choices. From Mount Nebo, God allowed Moses to glimpse the land he had promised. So, Moses' life reminds us that Egypt is more than a place, it's anything that holds us captive. God calls each of us out of bondage, inviting us to trust him through the wilderness of change. Though Moses didn't enter the promised land, his faithfulness paved the way for others. His story challenges us to ask, what is the Egypt God is calling me to leave behind? And am I willing to follow him into freedom, even when the path is hard? Let his journey inspire us to trust, obey, and believe that God still leads us toward his promises. If the story of the Exodus moved your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Bible Animations and turn on notifications so you never miss a powerful journey through Scripture. Leave a like if this message spoke to you, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that God still delivers today. More faith-building Bible stories are coming soon to inspire and strengthen your walk. Stay blessed, and we'll see you in the next video.